And Israel is continuing to negotiate with basically terrorists, I think would be the most proper way to say it. And there's many more things happening. So basically, the most recent thing is that the Israeli delegation is headed by Shin Bet Chief Ronen Bar, and they will arrive in Cairo tomorrow for more talks about the potential hostage ceasefire deal. Um, so that's what's happening, and it's pretty much the same deal we always mentioned, we always talked about. The proposal includes broad lines that can be moved around, so it's pretty much there's nothing really on the table. While we still have the general sort of red lines from both sides, it's there's not much to speak of. But also, Donald Trump, the uh, coming up president, has spoke out after the video, the basically propaganda video by Hamas with using the American hostage, who also spoke directly to Trump. So Trump spoke out after that, and he also, let's say, signaled something. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk about the Hamas ceasefire itself. I'm again using the new camera angle. I'm still not sure how it works. If it works well, I have to adapt it a bit. Uh, Joining me today is James Valiant. Hey, James, welcome to the Daily Objective. And I'll start with the same spiel we've been doing for 14 months. You don't negotiate with terrorists. It's not that hard. It only makes sure Hamas survives another day. It ensures that there will be more violence from the Palestinians, and especially hostage taking. I mean, if you let Hamas know that for every hostage they can get back one, five, 10, or 1,500 terrorists or architects of October 7, then they'll always go for it, and this will be a perpetual conflict. Um, and people don't get it. So I don't know, James, am I going crazy? Maybe I'm
No,
wrong.
no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. It is, of course, always counterproductive to attempt to negotiate. And if you do succeed in the negotiation, all you're doing is harming your own interests. That's the thing. What a successful negotiation with a terrorist means the terrorist lives another day, can survive. The current proposal, for example, would have the Palestinian Authority and Mr. Abbas basically take charge of Gaza as he's in charge of most of the West Bank. What improvement is that really going to bring? Now, Abbas says, well, what's left of Hamas has to agree. Of course, they have to agree to release hostages and to stop Hamas activity there. But no, there's no substitute for wiping out Hamas as a threat until those hostages are released, until the activity of violence in the area stops, until Hamas is truly destroyed. There will be no peace in the area. Now, Israel's laying down certain conditions about the Rafah crossing, conditions about the corridor that supplies these terrorists with their often Iranian supplied weapons, training, money, and so forth. And if the Palestinian Authority is there, and if Israel doesn't control that, then of course we're just setting up another disaster. We're just perpetuating, keeping alive the source of the problem, the source of October 7th. And that's all you do when you negotiate to keep a terrorist enemy surviving like that. So I don't see how the conditions have changed here, really. And I don't see how the sides are going to come to an agreement here. Now, part of what's interesting is what you said is Trump is going to be the new president of the United States in about 7 weeks now, but not for 7 weeks now. But he did say, and his exact words were, if there's still an American hostage when I take office on January 20th, there will be, quote, hell to pay. So he's signaling that if the hostages are still captive, there's going to be some dramatic action. Now, of course, it's intentionally vague to scare, the Palestinian side into releasing the hostages. But that there's a countervailing thing. Isn't it on Israel's interest to wait 7 weeks and for that hell to come, whatever it is, make Trump keep his promise and do something to get the hostages out or to punish them for taking the hostages. But I don't know what that'll be. Probably because there's political limits on what Trump can and will do himself. Will he send in boots on the ground, special forces into Gaza? I doubt it. I don't think there's the political will or power to do it. I think what he's trying to do is sort of threaten and vaguely and to attempt to coerce Hamas into some kind of release of the hostages and a cessation of violence. But there hasn't been a cessation of violence, and there's still hostages. And as you point out, there's still an American hostage. And if that doesn't change in the next 7 weeks, Trump is on the hook for delivering hell, according to his own words. So if that doesn't motivate the Palestinian side here to release the hostages and end the violence, all bets are off. What's going to happen? I doubt that U.S. troop boots on the ground will be going into Gaza. Probably some attack on Iran or something. But what's kicking this back into life? Because there's really, as you pointed out, there's really no change in the situation. Israel has to secure themselves against Hamas, which is still active, operative in Gaza. They've got to control the Rafah crossing so that supplies don't come in and we don't have Hamas rearmed and have this problem all over again. So while the hostages are still there, while violence is still happening, while order has not come to Gaza, giving the Palestinian Authority rule over it, having the Israelis pull out, is only setting Israel up for a future October 7th.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what would be even the proper word. Thankfully or unfortunately, nobody holds Trump accountable for the words he said in the past. So, I'd be as much as I would love to see, some paying hell or some hell when it comes to Gaza. I'll have a little bit more to say. I think there's a lot to discuss there, but we have a bunch of super chats, so let me read them out. Well, first, let me read a comment. I think, where was it? Someone said, "Am I going crazy, or did Bashar Assad beg Israel for help?" I was just looking up something. I've just read or seen a headline that apparently U.S. is considering lifting sanctions on Syria and Assad's regime if they break ties with Iran. So when we do that, we only then need to bring ISIS back, and then we can support all sides of the Syrian civil
Oh,
war.
yeah. Boy, doesn't that sound? All you have to do is stop your official relations with Iran, and now we trust the Syrian government? Seriously? Yeah, that on the face of it, that's absurd. I mean, yeah, what's the old P.T. Barnum line? There's a sucker born every minute. But in this department, there appears to be a whole lot of suckers in the Biden administration who really think that will suddenly change the Assad regime into something sane or civilized if they officially cut relations with Iran. Please.
And we have a few super chats. So first, thank you, PC, for super chat. He says, "Gentlemen, the UN again approved a nasty resolution and no mention of the hostages in it. UK was spineless, voted against Israel." I mean, we used to do episodes when these resolutions happen, but now they happen. Okay, sorry, you lost me there for a second. Yeah, now they happen so often that it's really hard to put. I mean, again, it's like, who is there now who's like, oh no, another resolution against Israel? Now, now this is the one. This is the one that it's sort of.
We know that all the authoritarian racist regimes in this world, which are most of the countries of this world, hate Israel. What's new? What's terrible, as you point out, is that the United Kingdom is willing to go along with these vicious anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist resolutions in the United Nations. That the United Nations has any moral legitimacy with any civilized government on this planet is itself a moral outrage, as we've covered many, many times. At least the United States is coming in usually to veto these things. That small comfort to poor Israel. Israel just should properly write off the United Nations as such. I know the United Nations played a role in the creation of Israel, right? More than 75 years ago. But no. That's not the source of their legitimacy. The source of Israel's legitimacy is that's the only the only country that attempts to respect any individual rights in the region or attempts to have a civilized country in the region. That's the source of their legitimacy. Nothing from the UN, my Israeli friends. You write them off as the hostile enemies that they are, and write off even Great Britain insofar as they sanction these vicious resolutions against Israel's basic right to exist. Still there, Daniel?
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh, um, so yeah, with this UN resolution, PC said it was approved. So I'm assuming it's a UN General Assembly resolution and not a UN Security Council resolution. But even when it comes to those, usually what we've seen is UK simply abstaining in almost all votes. But with the new Labour government, we've seen much more, and especially with David Lammy being the foreign secretary, a foreign minister, whatever they call it in the UK, we've seen much more basically I mean, pro-Hamas policy. That's what it is in effect. At the end of the day, um, uh, just quickly, something interesting because someone said people are referring to Trump as President Trump, and it's like a slip of the tongue. My understanding is that the presidents in the U.S. get like a lifetime
That's
membership of the president title when
it.
when they become.
In the American constitutional system, we don't have titles of nobility. They're forbidden in the American Constitution. But what we do is give people sort of a lifetime title. When you've been, it's not just generals and admirals. It's if you've held an office, you've been a senator. For the rest of your life, you'll be called Senator Smith or Senator Jones. Similarly with president. Once you've been president, they'll call you President Trump long after he's left office. So he is the former and soon to be again President Trump. But it's once you hold a high office, governor, senator, president, forever you will be referred to as that. Judges, retired judges, we'll still call them judge, or we'll still, in a formal context, of course, judges are called Your Honor, but in an informal context, we call them Judge Smith or Judge Jones, even when they're no longer judges. That's just the American tradition.
Yeah, we also have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. A super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, I just read Hamas made a threat if Israel attempts to rescue again. I mean, that was sort of implicit for pretty much the whole time, and especially when
14 months now. Yeah. For the last 14 months. And the only thing that is, in any case, we are down to fewer and fewer living hostages. And those are what Hamas has as bargaining chips. And only to the degree that Western governments will allow them to be used as bargaining chips. Now, think about that. They're using these innocent human lives as bargaining chips for the existence and continuation of terror and violence against Israel. That's an unacceptable bargain negotiation to be ever entering into in the first place. No, you release the hostages now, or you will die and continue to die. You have to attack Hamas and destroy Hamas. There is no substitute, Israel, for the elimination of Hamas in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority won't be able to come in and magically wave a wand and bring peace. It just won't happen. Besides, I don't trust the Palestinian Authority. These are the people that pay bounties to terrorists. They're going to be the peace bringers in Gaza? Oh, the whole thing's insane. It just cannot be. And like I say, what really needs to happen is a true Israeli occupation so that Israel can make sure that all of the terrorist forces, not just Hamas, but all of the violent anti-Israel forces there are taken care of and subdued. There's no substitute for that. And Mr. Abbas and the Palestinian Authority are not going to do that. Promise.
We also have a super chat from Wes. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Pass. Thank you so much. He says, thank you guys. Thank you for supporting the show. Someone in the chat says, what was it? Hamas was not negotiating in good faith. And, I'm sort of like, I'm trying to think what exactly the statement is. If it is saying Hamas is not negotiating in a good faith, is it redundant, or is it basically sort of like a da moment? I mean, in a sense, they are negotiating in. Well, what does negotiating in a good faith mean? If negotiating in good faith mean you are sort of like negotiating based on who you are, I mean, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Why would you why would there ever be an expectation it would be in a good faith? Like when it comes to trade, when it comes to negotiation, there is a supposition or sort of like assumption that, if me and James, I want to sell knife to him or something like that, like there is a general understanding that he won't stab me with him after he like buys it. I mean, that's like assumed. And so then we would say he was not negotiating in good faith if he did that. But when it comes to Hamas, a terrorist organization, I mean, yeah, what do you expect? Like, why would there ever be an expectation that Hamas would be negotiating in a good faith, or Hezbollah for that matter? I mean, we've had the ceasefire that I have recently heard from Blinken that it has been going nice. It has been working. The ceasefire has held up so far when Hezbollah had violated it every single day, if not every
Every
single hour, and Israel
day.
had to do something about it. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Hezbollah is violating that agreement every single day. And the United States Foreign Secretary is saying, oh, yeah, things are going swell. That is exactly correct. So why would we expect something different with Hamas? Hamas, okay, so let their fellow Palestinians come in, push out Israel, let that corridor be open. And what we want, when you're exchanging in good faith, what does that mean? That means we'll release these innocent civilians that we took on October 7th if you release a whole bunch of what, real terrorists? If you give us again a supply line with Iran, if you again get the Israeli army altogether out of Gaza so that we can do what we like, oh, there is no good faith about it. There can be no good faith negotiations with terrorists or dictators. We just have to get that into our head. Their long-term goal is always against you. So any short-term relief you give them is only assisting them in their long-term goal. It makes no sense. You have to destroy Hamas. And let me add to that. You have to destroy Hezbollah. And more than that, let me add to that. You have to take out the regime in Iran that supports both.
we
Nothing
had
less
a
than that will do if you want permanent peace in the area or something like permanent peace in the area.
We had a super chat from Paz again, but now he retracted his message. So if he wants to send a message again, we can read it out because I think the super chat still went through. So I'm not sure if there was a refund or something. But I think he was mentioning Trump. So I think he was mentioning something about if we think the hostages will be released by the time Trump goes into office, or if there will be some action from Trump. And I was talking to James about it because on some level, even Hamas are clearly mystical, are clearly in a sense they have no respect for reason. But what you sort of expect, even from terrorist organization, is they wouldn't actively like try to go against sort of what they want. Their goal is the destruction of Israel, and fundamentally it is an unreasonable position to be in. But it's not like they want to be destroyed. It's not like they want to not achieve their goal of destroying Israel. So they've recently we've talked about it. They released the video of the American hostage. Basically, one part of it was he was speaking in English specifically to Trump, and you said after that Trump, I believe, released his tweet when he said, all hell to Gaza, and some people are saying, Trump is going to be tough on Gaza, but on some level, it's not like Hamas is. On some level, it's not stupid. It's not like they, they would do something that would provoke someone that might do something against them, right? I mean, that's what Trump himself says, right? When he was in office, Hamas didn't do anything,
Right.
Putin didn't do anything, so it's something even
Right.
he accepts. So, him saying he will do hell, it's almost doesn't make sense on some level. So I was trying to sort of understand it. Why would they do that? And what I was
He's
thinking
trying,
about,
he's
yeah,
trying to scare the Palestinians into releasing the hostages and
yeah,
laying down arms in Gaza, suggesting to them that if there's still that American hostage there, maybe hostages in general still there, he's going to do something. He's strongly suggesting with a threat, with a veiled, vague threat. We don't know what that hell to pay might be, and he's keeping it intentionally vague. But by keeping it intentionally vague, they don't know what he's doing. So my view is that Trump is trying to, in effect, threaten them vaguely enough and strongly enough to release the hostages. But is that going to work? What if there are still hostages? What if that American is still held hostage in 7 weeks? Then he's on the hook for doing something, right?
Yeah,
People will
that,
expect.
that's what I was wondering about, because again, it's and it, I don't want to bring it up. It's a give them a hell is one hell of a way to start your presidency, and it should be expected. But sort of when it comes to sort of like morally, there are American citizens being still held by Hamas. I think morally, absolutely, there is a case for even America bringing troops into Gaza. I mean, there are American civilians. There are American civilians being held hostage. I mean, that's one thing a government has a responsibility to do. But when it comes to sort of like the political reality, or sort of like what Trump can afford, I mean, something like you're basically starting another war. That's what this would be. By although technically it would just be recognizing that you're already in war, but the way it would be viewed is sort of escalation. Trump is bringing troops into Gaza, and while I would love to see,
Escalation.
yeah, while I would love to see that, I don't really see that as like realistic, as something that can happen. And the thing is, Hamas also knows that, or at least if I'm considering it, they are considering. So what I'm wondering is if it really is, Trump doesn't want to come into office and have to deal with Hamas.
That's it.
He really wants the hostages out. He really doesn't want an issue that he has to deal with. I mean, he's already gonna have to deal with Ukraine, and he would have potentially have to deal with Lebanon. But what he was doing with Lebanon, he was saying there should be a ceasefire in Lebanon. He was, even when it comes to Ukraine, he's saying, I would have to look at, I haven't heard him recently, but I think there were statements some time ago that, there would be a deal in Ukraine before he even takes charge. And,
Right.
on some
He
level,
said
it could see he's just bragging, he's negotiating, but on some level, it might be wishful thinking, like, I really don't want to deal with that when I come into office. I'd rather just have it already solved.
that's it. He wants it to be that they were so intimidated by me personally. But that's what kind of a American policy is that? You need me and their fear of me to do something. And he would love the shining glow of, see, they were so scared of me. I think maybe part of his model was the Iranian hostage crisis. When Reagan, the very day Reagan was sworn into office, the Iranians released the diplomatic hostages that they had held back shortly after the Iranian Revolution. When Reagan was elected in 1980, those hostages have been a hostage for more than a year. And on the day Reagan gets sworn in, they release the hostages. That did not help the situation because Reagan never dealt with Iran. Look at how horrible he let the emergence of Hezbollah happen with the killing of hundreds of Americans and French people in Lebanon when Hezbollah became an organization way back in the early 80s. And that's no policy. It wasn't a good policy. I mean, Reagan, in effect, there was a good deal of luck in that sense. He was intimidating enough to get them to release the hostages. Clearly, there was a causal connection that you can't deny. Trump wants that kind of glow about him. They're so afraid of me. They're so intimidated by me that my mere presence brought peace everywhere. Ukraine, Middle East, everywhere. But in these contexts, it's far more complicated now than I think Mr. Trump believes it'll be. He was saying things like, by the time I get into office, I'll have negotiated a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Wow. I think similarly here, if there are still American hostages, there will be hell to pay. But if I'm in office, that's the same kind of vague threat where he wants the problem to be resolved so he doesn't have to deal with it. But the long-term problem is not going to be resolved that way. Even if all the hostages were released today, even if the ceasefire deal goes through, as I say, and Abbas takes effective control, and the Palestinian Authority takes effective control of Gaza, it does not solve the long-term problem. It puts it off. It kicks the can down the road, as we say. Trump will not have solved the problem and brought world peace. And that will not happen until we effectively deal with the enemy itself, until Russia is driven out of every bit of the territory that they've recently invaded, until Iran is taken out. Think of how many acts of war America has endured. Well, just in the last year, American bases in Iraq and Syria, in Jordan, international shipping has been disrupted by the Houthis. Israel, America's one true ally in the area, has been repeatedly and directly attacked by ballistic missiles from Iran. Hostages were taken. American hostages were taken. Civilians from our one true ally in the region were wrongfully attacked, killed, and many taken hostage. That was an act of war against the United States. And until and unless America starts treating these things as acts of war, we are just perpetuating the violence.
Yeah, and to some extent, this is also a big gamble on Trump's part. Maybe, I mean, we still have about 7 weeks since he comes into office, so there'll be time to talk about it. But if the first thing, if he says, he promises hell in Gaza, and let's say the hostages are not released, and hell is not delivered, what does this mean for the next 4 years of his policy? When on the first day we already know he's not basically gonna stand behind this threat, especially with the you have to always remember there's always China, and China's threat over Taiwan is gonna be there. And if there is an invasion to happen, it will most likely happen. I mean, depending on how it goes, it could happen under the last few years of Trump's presidency, based on the sort of the plans. If Trump doesn't delivers on his promises, China will be looking for it, and that's something that's really important to remember.
Absolutely. If Russia doesn't have hell, if Russia doesn't have hell to pay for what they did in Ukraine, that can only encourage China to invade poor Taiwan. Absolutely. If indeed the Islamic enemies of civilization don't face hell, we're just continuing the problem. Now, what would he do? What's the forms of this hell to pay? Will he bomb Gaza? Will he be involved in genocide against innocent Palestinians there? Or will he throw a bomb at Iran? And see, what kind of hell could he actually deliver? It's clear he doesn't want to deal with it in that fashion. He wants peace to suddenly break out simply because he's become president. That's what he's hoping for, in my view.
Yeah, we'll have definitely more episodes to talk about it. Let me just read out the last few super chats we have. PC says 5 minutes after he was sworn in, I read the hostages were freed. I think referring to Reagan. We also have a super chat, another from PC. Thank you so much. He says the long-term issue is Palestinian ideology there, definitely, and there's definitely going to be some time to talk about it on the reality show. But we also have a super chat from Paz again saying a made typo in previous message. Remember when Iran released hostages when Reagan took took out of office. So I think we've pretty much exactly talked about that. So thank you, Paz, for your super chat. As I mentioned, we have the reality show coming up. We'll be talking about Caspian Report, neutral in theory, pro-Hamas in practice. You'll learn more about them there, but it's basically just a sort of like that typical infographic show, just showing what's happening while basically putting a veil of neutrality when no neutrality can be afforded, really, when it comes to difference between Hamas and Israel. And also let me thank Gail for her super chat. Thanks. She says thanks for keeping us up to date. We'll definitely do that, and I think we'll try to talk about Syria. Well, it's a complicated thing. I think there's enough stories now that I think it could be interesting. But thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the reality show in just about a minute or so. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Be safe.